Hello, this is Brian Smither. Sorry I'm off camera. Thank you so much for tuning into the Resting on God Media. Now the camera is angled this way because I want to show you my book collection. So yeah, I'm a little off the, I'm a little off the picture here because this is basically the picture. Now, these are all books that I haven't read through every single one of these, but I would say most of them I have. Probably 8 out of 10 of them I've definitely read, and I continue to read through them, again and again, as the years go on. And I've had some of these books for several years. All these are Christian books. They're theological books, books on theology or church history or the Bible or whatever. I'll just show you a couple of. I'm going to show you these and recommend them to you, and so you'll know what they are and everything. Now this first one is by, if I can get it out, it's by Randy Alcorn. Is that his name? Yeah, Alcorn. Very, very thick book, actually. It's called Heaven. Now, most people know this is one of his top sellers, basically. And it's basically all about what the Scripture says about heaven. It's not a fairy tale about heaven. It's not, something he made up or anything like that. But it is very theologically accurate and sound and biblical. This book right here, by Robert Baker and John Landers. These are two Southern Baptist theologians. This is a summary of Christian history. It's about the same thickness. We're talking maybe, about 500-600 pages. So that's a good book on Christian history. This is another one that's similar. It's a history book. It's In Pursuit of Purity, American Fundamentalism Since 1850. It's basically a book on fundamentalism and the differences between fundamentalism and other theological branches. I'm going to put these back soon, and this is probably the most in-depth and the most scholarly book I have. This is Systematic Theology by Louis Berkhof, and if you're of the Reformed faith, you're very familiar with this probably, especially if you're scholastic or academically reformed in the academic community, going to seminary and everything. You're definitely going to be familiar with this because this is a very good textbook for Reformed seminaries. Okay. And then this one here is by Harold Berry. It's called What They Believe, The Truth Twisters. It basically runs down all the different movements and religions out in the world. Not major religions, but small religions like the Unification Church, Secular Humanism, New Ageism, Rosicrucians, Mormons, so on and so forth. Those. It doesn't really cover Islam and Buddhism and some of the old ancient major religions of the world, but it covers others. This is a book by James Montgomery Boyce and Phil Ryken, two pastors of 10th Presbyterian Church in Philadelphia, or I should say pastors emeritus, because Phil Ryken is now at Wheaton College in Chicago, and James Montgomery Boyce is with the Lord in heaven. Doctrines of Grace is what this is called. This is basically a book about what's popularly known as the 5 points of Calvinism. This here is basically a handbook on Christian maturity by Bill Bright. And it's just basically about how to grow as a Christian, and it's got some, it's got some neat little things in, like, questions and answers, like how to be an effective witness. That's what that particular page is about. And it's an interesting book. It's would be good for like Sunday school studies and things like that. Heresies, another really thick one. So it's unfortunate that a heresies book has to be this thick, but it is, nevertheless. Harold O.J. Brown wrote this. This is Heresy and Orthodoxy in the History of the Church, so sort of another history book. This is the School of Biblical Evangelism. For those of you who are familiar with The Way of the Master with Kirk Cameron and Ray Comfort, you're maybe familiar with this. The reason why it's so thick is because there's 101 chapters on how to reach people of all kinds of different groups, various questions that people may ask, kind of an apologetics defending the faith book. But it's in evangelical format. It's not just a book about how to defend the Christian faith as a doctrine and religion, but also how to share the gospel successively with other people in hopes of winning them to Christ. Then you got this one, little book here by Walter Chantry. He's a Reformed Baptist minister in Pennsylvania, and he wrote Today's Gospel Authentic or Synthetic, basically. A very, very good book on the gospel and how it's wrongly presented in many churches today. The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman. I would recommend this book, but I would recommend that you read it with a little bit of caution. I'm not saying Gary Chapman's a heretic necessarily, but it basically talks about how to show your love, to your spouse or to your children or to your other family members or whatever, And he talks about how some people feel like, feel like they're not loved, for instance, by their spouse because their spouse doesn't hug them enough or doesn't say good things about them enough or whatever. But I'd say to read it with caution, and the reason why is because, if we just relegate love for one another just to those particular ways of showing love, it kind of misses the point a little bit, I mean, you can love somebody and genuinely love and know that somebody loves you even if they don't, show you things the way that you would like for them to show you. The basic premise is, do they love you? And, so don't get all caught up in all the little things. But I think Chapman may get a little caught up in the little things there. But, whatever. It's like, that's the way it is. Anyway, moving on. World Religions in a Nutshell by Ray Comfort. And then William E. Cox, Reformed writer, An Examination of Dispensationalism. It's very thin. Dispensationalism is so superficial. No, I'm just kidding. But I'm definitely not a dispensationalist, as you can tell. So I make a little bit of jokes about it. But yeah, it's just a book explaining and examining it. Dispensationalism. This is another Reformed writer, Steve Curtis. Not very well known, but this is a critique of premillennialism. Now, some people might not know what that means. But it's basically a book about, it's critiquing the doctrine of premillennialism, and it's a teaching of last things. It says that Christ will return and then he'll reign for 1,000 years on the earth. The millennial reign is mentioned in the 20th chapter of Revelation, and some people see it like that. They see Christ coming back and then the 1,000 years is in the future after he returns. Most Reformed people, if not all, like myself, believe that the millennium is actually a heavenly reality taking place right now, and that when Christ returns, it will be the end of it. So his return is more post-millennial. And so that's what that book tries to put forth. Here is another history book. This is a little more of a summary than the other book I showed you by the Southern Baptist ministers. The 100 Most Important Events in Christian History by Curtis, Lang, and Peterson. Let's see if you put this back over here. And then you have Mark Dever, who's another Reformed Baptist from Washington, D.C. He's got this book, 9 Marks of a Healthy Church. Very good book there. If you are a pastor, especially a young aspiring pastor like myself, or maybe you just got into the pastorate and you're still new at it, that I highly recommend that book. And I also recommend this book as far as proclaiming the gospel. It's called Proclaiming. It's a little faded, but it says Proclaiming a Cross-Centered Theology. And here are the multiple authors. You can see there, Dever, Duncan, Moeller, and Mahaney. Highly scholarly people on the Word. The New Testament and New Pentecostalism. This is a critique of the modern Pentecostalism. It's by a more fundamentalist-leaning theologian named George W. Dollar. And so I wouldn't say he's Reformed, but he is. But I believe he's very sound biblically with this particular book here. And then you have David Goldman's Islam and the Bible: Why Two Faiths Collide, and forwarded by Erwin Lutzer. And so this is a very sound book it says there's differences between Christianity and Islam. It basically tells you why that is. Some people believe, especially the more liberal you might be, believe that Islam and Christianity they're basically the same faith and we believe in the same God. Nothing could be further from the truth. This is just a list to live by, basically just kind of daily living kind of things. I don't know why it's in here. It's not really theological, but can't go wrong by some of these lists in here, like how to succeed in life, how to succeed in your marriage, romance, health, and things like that. Just some tips. Kind of an eschatology one here. 4 views on the Book of Revelation. 4 different authors, because apparently there's 4 different views on the book. And then there are 3 views on creation and evolution by Moreland and John Mark Reynolds. And I will be right back with part 2, because I'm about halfway done here, because there's some more right down here on this shelf, but I'm at my 9-minute mark, so I'll be right back.